Let's talk heritage guitars. Welcome back, troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Zach was in the market for a custom shop model, so he thought he'd do a new guitar day with me and see his guitar get featured on the show. Now, if you've never heard of this brand before and don't understand why I would be excited, this is the company that was birthed from Gibson Kalamazoo shutting down. Some of the original employees bought it and started their own company called Heritage, building them like they used to is the way they say. Since then, it's been put under new ownership, I do believe, but there's some guys that swear by Heritage over a Gibson nowadays. I've gotta say, that's a nice cherry sunburst. Like, if you're into this hue, this is very similar to like the 80s Heritage cherries. That's got a really nice flame top. I can see why Zach wanted to pick this particular one. But I really do enjoy this case. It's a nice crushed green velvet-like interior. It's not quite as soft as I thought it would be from the looks of things, but the outside's like this leather-like feel. I don't believe it actually is leather though. But this is called the Heritage Custom Core H530. So this is essentially a Gibson ES-330, but within their own make of things. So you got things like the dual single coil dog ear P90s. You've got the trapeze tailpiece. It's funny that they call this a custom core because there is no center core of this. It's just a fully hollow-bodied guitar. But hey, even our back has that premium laminate maple. I did not know to expect that the edges were also flamed, so... But we've got the small block inlays here with the rosewood fretboard, but now we get to the Heritage headstock. So it's kind of interesting. A blend of PRS and Gibson is the best way to put it. But it looks like we are tinting the lacquer here, and we've got some sort of an interesting inlay pattern. When you play it, this is what you see. You don't see all the other weird, goofy stuff. That just looks like the regular Gibson headstock profile, still angled back and everything. But uh-oh, I'm noticing some dings on the headstock straight out of the case. I guess it makes sense. It is a pointier headstock, but I'll have to talk to the dealer about that. The only reason I even noticed that was because I was enamored by the Made in USA stamp. They're still using the same one that Gibson was all the way back then. So that's what's cool about Heritage. They're using a lot of the original Gibson Kalamazoo stuff even yet till today. I know what you're wondering. How does this compare to the current day Gibson ES-330? Gibson isn't currently making this model. I believe the last time it was in production was around 2020 for the Slim Harpo, and that was just a Gibson USA production, not custom shop. However, Gibson is currently making the USA Epiphone Casino, which is a very similar guitar, but again, that's not a custom shop model, so it's not necessarily apples to apples. So this particular guitar has kind of carved its own market in a roundabout way. But if you wanted to compare it to something, it's closest to the ES-335 compared to like a 59 or 64 reissue custom shop. Those would be $6,000 from Gibson, whereas the Heritage Custom Core is $4,799. But they're being offered in the Dark Cherry Sunburst like we see here today, a Trans Cherry, as well as Antique Natural. But they also have aged offerings for about $700 more at $5,499. Whereas in Gibson territory, it goes from 65 all the way up to like $8,000. In first impressions, the neck and fretboard feels eerily similar. But besides just the guitar and case, I'm curious what kind of case candy we get. Some sort of a sign-off card, a custom shop Heritage pamphlet telling you about your 2-year warranty. Thank you for buying from us. Some case keys. This is a nice touch. It's a really heavy keychain, as well as a truss rod tool. Then we do have a COA booklet, but it goes this way and can be opened like so. The fabric kind of has an interesting design there. Reminds me of like ashwood grain or something. But here's what our COAs are looking like. Completed 4/2 of 24. Now let's go ahead, throw it onto the workbench to take an individual look at its parts and specs before we throw it on a strap and have a sound sample. All right, let's begin our deep dive, starting off with our pickups. So first we can take off our pickup cover. It's actually formed and shaven down to fit just the neck pickup. Then this is a dog ear P90, so you've got these metal feet on it. They sit on top of a plastic spacer, that way you're not scratching up your body. That's why they shave this down. That way when it's installed, it's not overly high. But here you can look inside the neck pickup cavity. It looks like you have some sort of a mahogany block right here that the neck joins into. It's a long neck tenon construction. But we'll definitely have to break out the endoscope this episode, because that is a solid cavity. There's no way in or out. So this cavity is completely bare because, again, this does not have a center block. You will get some feedback using these. However, it's going to acoustically project a little bit better. I did do a little bit of strumming before I took this apart, and I was impressed by how loud this thing was, and it's got that whole vibration thing going on. I was a little bit less impressed with the routes here. Like, most of it's clean, and even the Gibsons, they're always very messy on this spruce. But it appears they're creating them traditionally, so you have a 3-layered top. It's easiest to see right here. So we got our figured veneer, another layer, and then another layer of maple. They don't actually specify what that center one is on these particular ones, although it's typically poplar. But then you have a spruce bracing. Here's a look at the other side of the cavity. But then we actually have a grounding wire coming off of this pickup, and I would assume it runs all the way down here and grounds off at our tailpiece. But here's what the backside of the pickup looks like. It's actually branded Heritage Custom Shop. What a novel idea, putting branding on a P90 pickup. Being a bridge pickup, this one needs to be a bit thicker, and it is, but still has that plastic spacer underneath it. I also found this interesting. The pickup screws are different. So this is the bass side of the neck. This is the treble side. Same thing is true for your bridge position. The one that you can see that's not hidden underneath the pickguard is much larger. My guess is because the one that you see, it can be domed and a little bit more boisterous, whereas the flat one is to make it so the pickguard rests easily against it. It's something a careless tech could easily mess up if they're not paying attention. But they call their P90s the 225 Classic. So we'll have to see if they're any good or not. As far as construction, looks like your typical P90, not stacked for hum canceling or anything like that. It seems like pretty traditional readings, about 8 in the bridge, 7.37 in the neck, and them together, 3.83. But we've got black top hat style knobs, is your volume controls for each pickup, and your tones. Well, this thing looks pretty good even without a pickguard. Here's how they're doing that. It's a little bit more stylized than what Gibson ends up using, but they have their Heritage Custom Shop sticker on it, and it's constructed in a very similar manner. It's got a plastic block glued onto it. But now let's dive in with our endoscope. Things first, I see a little bit of finish overspray in here. Not a big deal. But this is something I saw that I liked even from the top. They have a nice finish applied to the edges of the F-holes. So instead of just being sprayed black to blend in, it matches the top. The potential downside to that is you see the 3 layers of the top very clearly. But here's that block of wood that surrounds the neck pickup. Looks like they have some sort of like light bracing underneath it, but that's what they use to join the neck into the body. It needs something to support it. But this is the treble side horn. You can see you've got some sort of like a mahogany kerfing running along the entire edge. You've got glue everywhere because you're not supposed to see in here, but you can just barely see through to your flamed maple. But that's kind of interesting. I wonder if they don't actually press the sides, like as far as being a sandwich of woods. Because as you can see here, the inside wood is completely plain with no flame. Kind of like what we were seeing right here, only the top layer has the figuring. But as far as the wiring, looks like you got some orange drop capacitors, and you can see our toggle switch right there, as well as the other pots. But now we can follow that wire from the bridge pickup. It goes all the way here, and does indeed cap off with that wooden block that the strap button gets secured to. But it does look like we have some sort of a spruce bracing running along the entire center. And then inside our bass side F-hole, see that sticker that we were looking at a little bit more clearly. H530 is the model, color, Dark Cherry Sunburst. I find it weird that they actually put the pickups model right there, but whatever, 225 Classic. And our serial number, and talks about how it was made in Kalamazoo. All things considered, I would say it looks fairly well constructed. The only thing I'm not really a big fan of is over here, where the F-hole is, you can see a lot of black marks, as well as tooling impressions in many areas. It just kind of stinks that it happens to be right where you can actually see in the guitar. Here that is in regular lighting, with this being used as a flashlight. It's that one right there that really bugs me. That's a deep scratch of something dragging against it when they were doing their installation job. Now, is it super noticeable, like when you're playing? No, it's just only when you're finally inspecting it. But I've never personally saw that on a Hollowbody before. So we definitely ran into some pros and cons there. But now let's take a look at our bridge. They're not using an ABR1, so I guess that's probably what that spruce bracing is for. It needs something to put into. And in fact, it's lightweight aluminum made by API. So basically the Gibson Nashville style bridge. But look at the fit. Awful. Not just kidding. This is a locking bridge. So they have these little skirted screws, I guess you could say, that fit right over top, and you just secure down into place. And then once you have them on there, it doesn't move at all. So once you have your guitar set up, the thumb wheels don't move, this doesn't fall off during string changes, you know your setup is going to stay on par. Now their listing said it's also a locking trapeze tailpiece. I couldn't figure out where it was locking. I thought maybe the strings were actually stuck into place, so I took the thing off, but no, you just have to get a little bit more room on them before they come out. And otherwise it just seems like a pretty simple trapeze tailpiece. But if you were looking to put a Bigsby on this, you would have to get the version that installs down here and doesn't screw into the top. But next, let's talk about their custom shop finish. It's nitro, so it's going to age and check all that other good stuff. However, it appears that they use a very similar compound to what Gibson does that they call VOS. It gives it a slightly aged hue to it, like you can see all the scratches and whatnot. Like it doesn't feel perfectly glossy. It has just a little bit of grime to it, I guess you could say. That'll become more apparent on our black headstock face, but I just wanted to point it out. They are trying to give you a slightly older vibe by this without doing the full aging process. But here we can take a look at the edges. When I was reading their sheet saying, oh yeah, we use premium maple laminate, I was like, yeah, okay. But now that I see it, it's like, okay, yeah, maybe you have something there. I don't know if they're all this nice. Again, this is the first Heritage I have ever touched. But now we can move on from our mainly maple body into a mahogany neck with rosewood fretboard. Our inlays are the small blocks. It's made of acrylic material, so not true mother of pearl. But then again, that's probably not what they were going for here. But doesn't this neck just look so familiar? And you can see some working marks within the fretboard. Kind of looks like flame figuring, but it's not. And some of the frets do have some tooling marks right by them. Something about that and having fret nibs just always seems to equal some tooling marks. But I would say the frets were reasonably shiny out of the factory. But we have a bone nut that measures 1.69 inches, 2.086 at the 12th. They call it a chunky C neck profile shape, and it's 0.92 at the first fret neck depth and 1.02 at the 12th. Here's that neck profile at the first fret and the 12th fret. It is a really big chunky neck. It's a 24 3/4 inch scale, measured the exact same way Gibson does it. And it's advertised as a 12-inch fretboard radius. However, I personally measure closer to 10, like it's probably somewhere in between there. But now the face of our headstock. I was really curious about their truss rod situation. Here's what it's looking like. Very similar to what Gibson's using. And you've got some interesting workmanship marks underneath there, but they completely paint that over black. But you do have like a fold or something. The lacquer's like not completely flush there. However, you only notice that in like really extreme lighting situations. But here's where you can tell they definitely have some sort of a light buffing aging compound to it. So that's why I think they're doing something similar to VOS. The truss rod cover is actually kind of cool. Some sort of an elongated trapezoid, but it's got that wide beveled edge. So you know what they're mimicking with that. And you got that fancy Heritage logo with whatever they call this. Now we've got it all put back together. A few other things I wanted to note. These actually ship from the factory with Elixir strings, which are kind of expensive strings, but they always feel so nice because they're coated. So that is another premium feature that I do appreciate that the Heritage does. But does anybody else think these F-holes look just a little bit wider than normal? Here's the width of them, and then just the general width. I want you to hear it unplugged just on the bench. You just feel vibrations all over it. So I don't know if that's a one-off occurrence, that this just happens to be a really good resonant example, or if that's how all of them are. But it seems to be well constructed in that aspect. But here's a look at the backside. It's pretty much all the same stuff. Light VOS treatment, super flamey grain. This is a nice one, especially with that Dark Cherry Sunburst color. They've got that nailed down pat. But you'll notice no back plates, so they use the F-holes to help them fish it through the bridge pickup cavity to get all your electronics in. You've got your output jack on the side. They don't use any type of a plate, but the strap button helps secure your trapeze tailpiece. And your other one is right here, just at the very bottom of the neck. But looking at this neck is so freaky deja vu stuff to the late 80s of Gibson. They're using like the exact same hue and finish style. And then when you see the Made in USA stamp, that's just funny to me as somebody who really enjoys the 80s Gibson production. But you have the Heritage branded tuners. They've got the Grover tuner tips. But here's how they do their serial numbers. HC 1240484. At least with those dings, you really only see them if you're looking at the top. They're hidden from looking directly on the back and directly from the front, so I can see how it got missed. But how much does our friend weigh? 6 pounds, about 4 ounces. That's not bad, but that's what happens when you take out the center block. But let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how these 225 P90 pickups sound. First we'll do a little bit of acoustic projection. I'm noticing that bridge P90 is really hot, like almost too attacking. For clean tones anyways, let's roll that down a bit. That tames really quickly, so here's 10. 9. 8. Good to know that you can tame that down if you don't want a fire breather. Even the tone knobs are very responsive. 10 is really powerful, right? But it sounds great. Just remember, you can roll that down just a tad. We'll do that too. So there we go, the Heritage 530. What are my final thoughts on this thing? Did we find a few weird QC things within the body? Yeah, but that's pretty much all I can really hold against this guitar, because it's beautiful, it plays very well. Is it as good as a Gibson? I don't think it's fair to even say that. I think they're definitely on the same page. Gibson Custom Shop versus Heritage Custom Shop. I think it really just comes down to what you have to have on the headstock, and if being made in Kalamazoo, Michigan means anything to you. It's very evident to me that they're using a lot of techniques that they were at least doing in the 80s and maybe even before. I'm not necessarily the biggest Hollowbody guitar guy, but I've had my fair share of the Gibson equivalent in 335s and a few 330s. I would 100% be open to documenting more Heritage guitars on the show, so if you're interested in buying one, feel free to use my new Guitar Day service and we can check them out together. I would say the three things that surprised me were A, the pickups. I still need to take some time to digest what I was just hearing, but it is nice to know that there's kind of a quirk to them. Full on 10, they're almost just too much, but I think they were designed like that, kind of as like a built-in boost. Feature number 2 that shocked me was just how big this neck is. I think this would be categorized as cumbersome for many players. So if you prefer a 60s neck profile, this is not going to be for you at all. I really do categorize this just about as big as an R8 or an R7 Gibson baseball bat neck, which is good if you like that, because I don't think you can normally find that neck profile on many vintage 330s. But the third thing that surprised me, just how good this looks in person. I don't know if the video captures it or not, but that color and the flame figuring, the custom shop makes some pretty nice stuff. Heritages always have looked kind of strange to me in photos and seeing people play them, but you as the player, it feels right and it looks and sounds right as long as you're not looking at the headstock face on. So alright, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed taking a look at this Heritage with me today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care.